Terranisaur is back with another build guide. SSF Mage build guides is what I focus on. This one in particular is a sorcerer build, and it's going to focus on Meteor, which is a super fun skill. It makes a bunch of giant meteors fall from the sky, doing a ton of damage. It's one of the highest burst DPS builds for Mage. It's probably my favorite mage build ever. I think it's really fun. There are other really good ones too, depending on your playstyle, but this one, the only problem with it is it's a little bit squishy. Other than that, super fun. I think it's pretty beginner friendly too. Anyone can play it, pick it up. Super powerful, super fun. So let's get into it. I usually focus on passives, then skills, then I go through like idols and blessings and gear. The passives give you sort of like a general sense of what to look for, and then you kind of get more specific as you get into the gear. So one thing I'll note, so if you read Meteor, it says added damage is applied at 950% effectiveness. What this actually is talking about is specifically added damage, which is like, you see how on this staff it says plus 100 spell damage? That's added damage. If we go to our tree, plus 5 spell damage from Spellslinger, that's added damage. So if you ever have an opportunity to get more flat damage like this, like here, here, staff, that's going to apply at a huge damage effectiveness. I think 950 has got to be one of the highest in the game. I mean, most skills and abilities are looking at, 100 to 200, so 950 is really, really high, so it makes damage stacking really good. So we're going to touch on that a little bit as we go through the tree. So I'm going to start off with just the regular mage points. I do this for almost all of my builds. This one's especially good if you're using teleport. This build does use teleport. So we get increased cooldown, recovery speed. Cast speed's really good. Ward retention is really, really good. One of the best mage stats if you can get it with as good. Like, this is 10% per point, so that's really good. That's really good. I really like this effect. If you take a big hit, you kind of get a giant boost of ward, a little cooldown, so kind of an extra little way to save yourself if you're about to die. And then this intelligence and resistances is really good. This is my cookie cutter. Almost all my builds use this. I'll go into Rune Master because there's not that many points in here. These two are kind of pointless, just leftover things. This is one of the best nodes in the tree. This is basically mandatory for every build. I mean, you don't like need it, but 8% less damage taken and 64 health. It's really, really good. Anytime you can get a less damage taken, that's really good. Because it's multiplicative, so that's really good. Really top priority. This I like. You get a decent amount of crit, and then you get this 15% more damage for enemies on low health. And low health is like 35%, so it's a decent more damage and crit. So I try to grab this one for crit builds usually, unless there's something better to take. Alright, and then we get into the sorcerer. So there's a little bit of flexibility here. You can definitely take a few things. I'll try to make note of what are the strong ones and some of their alternatives. This is going to be your strongest for any crit-based mage build. This is increased spell critical strike chance per intelligence, and we're going to stack intelligence. It's a little harder to stack intelligence on this build, but we're at 87 right now. So you're getting about 300% crit chance for basically for free, because intelligence gives you a bunch of other things that we can touch on later. I guess I could touch on them right now. So intelligence base gives you increased spell damage, and it gives you ward retention, and now it's giving you crit, and then we are going to end up taking this set that gives you increased flat spell damage per intelligence. I can go over that really quick. The gear. So you have Valatria's, if you can see the set bonus, +1 spell lightning damage per 2 intelligence. And we talked about how Meteor is really good with flat damage. So that's going to be a ton of damage. So we are going to try and have an intelligence sub-theme going on. It's not the most important thing in the universe, but we're going to go with that. These two are just to be able to get this. This is increased mana regen. Increased mana regen is really important for Meteor. One of the top stats, more than any other mage build. Meteor is just costs a lot of mana. So it is at 102 mana right now. That's a lot of mana. So we have 400 mana. So you're gonna need a lot of mana regen to keep up your damage. So this has the nice flat 18%, and then you get 5% per 100 max mana. These ones are a little, not really sure about these. I wouldn't say like, yes, you definitely need this. You could literally move all these 8 points somewhere else. The main selling point, like the spell damage isn't great. You get, so I guess to read the fine print, these effects are doubled if you have used a skill that costs 40 or more mana recently. So we get double these. So you get 50% spell damage for 8 points. Is okay, but you get 50% ward retention, which is pretty much all the time. So I'm a kind of a ward retention fan, so I like that. But these 8 you could swap out for something else. I do like getting this. Penetration and leech is just going to be extra damage, and I like getting as much leech as I can as long as it's not too hard to get. It means when you take damage, your health gets lower. The more leech you have, you're gonna get your health back up to top, which is really nice, especially on kind of a squishier builds. If you take one big hit, you kind of need to gain your health back instantly, or you might just die. This one's not that good. It got nerfed, I think, this patch or last patch. I can't remember. But it gives you some extra nice. So you get 5 ward per 30 mana. So you get, like 50 to 100 ward, depending on how much mana you have. But you do spam a lot of casts. So you can see if we're at 800 now. We're up to 1200 or whatever. So it's something. This is just going to be for the crit multi. 50% crit multi is really good. These ones are good, so you get ward decay threshold, which is nice. It helps you kind of buffer your ward retention. And then we're stacking intelligence, so it's a big boost for that. And a lot of this is to get over here. You really want the 15% mana regen. Mana regen is super important for Meteor. And then the extra ward on potion use is fine. Coming down here, 15% cast speed, 5% spell damage. This is pretty good rate. Normally this isn't that great, but since Meteor scales so well with added damage, I think this is very, very good. I really like this for Meteor. Increased area, 40% and 70% elemental damage. This seems like a real winner. I think you'd be hard-pressed to not take this for Meteor. One of the more obvious kind of must-haves. This one is really strong too. You get your added spell damage, and then we're at the 300 mana threshold, so we have, a 70% chance to refund 20% of our mana. So, whatever that calculates out to be, 70% of 20. So, 16% chance to refund some of the mana. Yeah, I didn't say that correctly, but you have the chance to get some mana back, and Meteor costs so much. This is generally pretty nice to have. This is going to give you your mana spent gained as ward. You're going to spend a ton of mana, so you're going to get a good chunk of that as ward, and it's going to increase your max mana. And then increased cooldown recovery speed is really good. It's mainly so you get more teleports and more flame wards. Those are kind of your main. So some other ones, I mean, you could definitely go with something like this for tankiness. This is always really good, so it's just more damage. And anytime you see a more multiplier, it's usually pretty good. Something like this is fine if you need elemental resistance. You do have a decent stun chance with this build, so adding even more stun is strong. I know there's a few other good ones. Oh, definitely Arcane Momentum, Essence of Celerity is always a good combo. So that's the passive tree. There is actually some pretty good nodes in here. Calculated Destruction, Wisdom, probably Rift Bolt, Arcane Obliteration, Spell Singer. Yeah, all these are actually pretty good for mages. Some trees you build and things, you know, the passives aren't that great. They don't do that much, or they're not super important. I think these ones are pretty impactful and help you build. So next we're going to go over into skills. I'm not going to talk too much about these. So Flame Ward, you get 30% damage reduction when you take it. We're going to have it last longer, so it lasts, you know, for a little over 4 seconds, which isn't a ton. And we're going to get another 40% less damage, and it's going to cast when we're stunned. So we're going to huge damage reduction through there, cast when we're stunned, lasts for 4 seconds. And then my favorite, ward retention, and then we're going to come over here and get 600 armor. So really, really, really big damage reduction. You go from being very squishy to, you know, being able to tank big, powerful hits from bosses when you have Flame Ward active. And this is one of the big appeals behind stacking some cooldown recovery. You have more Flame Wards, which is you can't like stand in effects. You're not like invincible, but it kind of feels that way sometimes. I think since we're talking about defensive mechanics, we'll go into Static Orb. So Static Orb's really primary purpose is just to get you Lightning Aegis. So you're going to cast Static Orb every 8 seconds. Make sure you have Lightning Aegis up. Because you're going to get 25% less damage taken when you have Lightning Aegis, which is a huge damage reduction. Just absolutely mandatory for endgame mage. You either need to take this, well, for Sorcerer or Rune Master. You have to either take this or Lightning Blast gets it automatically. I think with all that you just kind of die, so pretty mandatory. But this build actually does use Static Orb for something else. We're taking the full mana cost Static Orb. I don't know if you're not super familiar with it. There's this option where you can reduce the mana cost to basically free. Minus 26, minus 6. And then you can just use it as a free way to gain Lightning Aegis. But for this particular setup, we're going to grab some Tendrils, a little projectile speed, and these small orbs. So you're going to shoot it out. It's going to shoot a bunch of little orbs, a big orb, some Tendrils, and then a shock chance. It's a huge shock chance bonus. And you're basically going to end up shotgunning shock stacks. So you're going to shoot it once, it's going to explode, it's going to have all the little orbs, and you're going to get 10 stacks of shock on the enemies and the packs, and the Tendrils will fan out. So you get some nice more damage multiplier, because every stack of shock the enemy has, they decreases their lightning resistance, so you'll end up doing more damage. So that's static, that's Flame Ward. The next defensive one is Teleport. So Teleport is a really good skill to kind of bounce around. It has a fairly short cooldown, under 3 seconds. This node doesn't particularly matter. The big powerhouse node is Out of Body. Casting Teleport converts a percentage of your current health into twice as much ward. So you can see as I'm teleporting around, I'm gaining a bunch of ward, up to 1500. And you're getting a huge boost of ward every time you do it. And you say, whoa, I'm losing a lot of life. But like we talked about earlier, you're going to have life leech. So if you're actually hitting anything, you're just going to regain this life right away. And then you're going to use this very frequently to generate ward. The other thing is, if you've used it in the past 4 seconds, you get 50% ward retention. And if you've used it in the past 4 seconds, you get 250 armor. And we do stack armor with this build. That's one of the main defensive mechanics. I'll go into that a little bit later. We've got 250 armor, 50% ward retention, and then we're going to go over here and do a stat buff duration. So we're going to get this 250 armor and 50% ward retention that are going to be up pretty much all the time. So I really like that combo. I just sort of run around teleporting. You can probably see in the gameplay video. It's a really nice way to get mobility mixed with some nice passive boosts and the ward. It's a really big ward generator. Okay, let's go on to focus, focus, the main ones you want mana regen, and then this mana regen per missing value. These are kind of the main ones. If you just had 5 points, you would definitely put them in those. The haste is strong too. You get haste per 20 mana. You're going to be getting a ton of mana, so you're going to get really long haste, which is really, really nice. That's probably the second best. And then you know me, I love my ward retention, 100% ward retention while you're channeling. And I do think this is one of the top ones too. Iron Stance. So you get armor per intelligence, and we're stacking intelligence, and you get 40% more armor. So a huge armor bonus. And then I think the last ones I tend to put in here, just 16% less damage from shocked enemies. Generally, things are going to be shocked around you, so you get a nice little extra less damage taken. So that's focus. Focus's main thing is actually to regenerate mana. I didn't mention that. You have a bunch of increased mana regen, and you get this burst. And so we're going to get even more mana and ward off this burst that happens. I can show you. So go here, we're losing the mana, so go around, and we get a little burst. We get a little burst of mana and increased mana regen. So you'll get your mana up pretty fast with focus and all the mana regen that we have. So on to Meteor next. There are a few different ways you can build this. It's kind of fun to mess around with them. I'd encourage you to try them. I'm going to explain the tree. We get 1 point here for the cast speed. So basically you cast Meteor once and you get 15% increased cast speed. The problem with this like 15% pen is actually really nice, but it's fire penetration, and I don't think this translates to lightning when you convert it to lightning. It might, but I don't think it does. If you look at the tooltip, Craterborn increases fire damage and cast speed. I think it doesn't work. I'm not 100% sure, I guess. So this is just going to be damage, more damage, and more damage to full health enemies. This one's really good. And then this one's kind of the all-star. So Meteor deals more damage of all types of fire. And we are going to convert Meteor to lightning. I can show you how. So that's with this. So the staff, you get a Velatria's. You either get the Velatria's staff or you get the set. So you can put set prefixes on items. You can either look up how to do that online, or I'll make a guide about it someday. And then that's going to convert 100% of Meteor base damage is converted to lightning. So if we go back to the skill, this is just going to act at 80% more damage. So really, really strong. Velatria's isn't too hard to get. Obviously don't get this before you get one if you're like league starting or however. But yeah, once you get access to converting it to lightning, this becomes an 80% more damage. So kind of a no-brainer. This is more damage, but I don't like these reduced cast speeds tend to be multiplicative. It's like a 5% less cast speed, so and it ends up seeming really brutal, like more brutal than you'd think. You're like, oh, 10% damage, that's so great. But having fast cast speed is really important, almost more for defensive capabilities. You want to be able to sort of cast a few meteors and then move. If you're sitting there stuck, standing still casting meteors, you're gonna die more. So don't particularly like that one. Just from my play testing, I guess I could just go over here. So we've got 8% more crit chance and then large meteor chance. So the large meteor chance is really good. I'll explain in a moment. Then the base crit's obviously incredible. It goes from your base crit from 5% to 13%. I do like these, but I'm going to touch on a different option where you maybe drop this or a little bit later, but 90% crit multi is really good. I don't have a ton of crit multi right now, so this just acts as like a pretty big more damage multiplier. These you only take to get over here. So this is number of meteors for direct casts +1 plus 50 mana. So you're saying, okay, I'm doubling my mana, but I'm also doubling the number of meteors. So is that really a win? No. But if you come over here, you literally get more meteors. So every cast, instead of 1 meteor falling, we've got 2, 3, 4 meteors falling. And you can even get another one, 5, and then if you have 2 more points, you get up to 6. So 6 meteors falling per cast is incredible. And this is kind of what I was touching about with maybe some of these fringe, like maybe a few points here or a few points here. Like if I drop these and I grab, you know, a few more points, 3 more points here, you know, going from 4 to 6 meteors, well, that should be 50% more damage multiplier. But one of the problems is this loses radius. So even though you're getting more meteors, the more points you have in this particular one, you're not always hitting with all the meteors. So there's that problem. And then you're just sort of giving up the flat damage for some of these other ones. But if you happen to have the points, there's ways you can get even more plus meteor that I'll touch on, but definitely an option to consider. You can play around with it, put some points in here, try to get more meteors and try to feel out, you know, based on how much area of effect you have, how many are actually hitting, and certain numbers of meteors will hit certain numbers of targets. So fun to mess around with. So yeah, there isn't too much going on. I mean, it's mostly just damage, cast speed, crit, and then take a few points and like more meteors. The fall speed is actually a really good stat for meteor, because you just do your damage faster. So that's the passive and skills. Now we will go over to idols, blessings. I really like spell damage leeches health, crit avoidance, physical resistance. Shred lightning is the only real mandatory. You just like kind of have to take this one. It's a huge damage boost, and it does synergize well with the static orb shotgunning. So it'll get with your shock stacks, and then it'll help shred a bit. This one, I do think if you can get frailty on your gear, you're probably better off taking armor here. And that's the same with all these blessings. They're not really set in stone. I'd say this is the best, most mandatory, but these other 4 could definitely be swapped out depending on your gear and what you have going on. Alright, back to inventory. I don't think anything in the idols is super mandatory. I like the increased armor and mana, so we got 1 here and 1 here. Critical strike chance, increased area. I think one of these is really good if you can get an increased area. That helps a lot. Your multiple smaller meteors are going to be able to hit more consistently if you get more area. This one is for resistances, and then increased cast speed while you have lightning aegis is always good. You can get a pretty high roll on it. But these are probably my MVP, just the increased health and resistances. So we've got elemental resistance, cold resist, cold resist. But getting all that big chunk of increased health is really nice. And then a few little things to round out your resistances. Alright, on to kind of the most meaningful parts of the build. So now that we have our base established, we looked at the passive tree, we looked at the skills. A lot of the stuff in the passive tree and the skills tends to be kind of basic. There's not much going on. And then the idols and blessings too. A lot of it is like stats. You kind of get a feel for where the build is headed, damage-wise and skill-wise. So the main thing we're going to be doing is using Velatria's set, and specifically this meteor damage covered with the lightning, to enable us to take that 80% more damage node and the meteor tree that we talked about, and get this plus spell lightning damage per 2 intelligence. And we're going to stack intelligence and get a bunch of spell lightning damage, which is going to multiply at 950% added damage effectiveness. So the way this actually works, if you're new, is you can do this thing where you shatter set items and put their bonuses on gear. It's always a prefix. So the way I have this set up right now, we have the prefix sort of crafted onto here. We have the prefix craft on here, and I think I must have sealed it. So this is kind of a crazy staff, actually. It's pretty cool. You have T8 spell damage. That's with the new beast crafting T8 Exalted. Then we have a sealed base, and then we have 2 tier 5 regular prefix. The prefixes are kind of the most important ones that are going to do damage. So this ended up being a pretty nice staff. I think critical strike multiplier would be better than increased spell damage for your T8 mod, but there's other ways to build it. You don't always get the best mod, best stats that you want on every piece of gear when you're playing SSF especially. The other way to build this, typically you're going to grab a Legends Entwined ring. That's the ring that allows you to complete a set. And then you could free up, so that you could free up potentially. So what that would do is you would lose your T8 mod, so we'd lose 300% spell damage. But you can do this trick where you only need one set item. So I'd free up a prefix here, and there are ways, I could probably make a guide on it, but there is a ring that you only need one ring prefix to get +1 set. There's gloves and there's a relic set. We only need one. So you can have a set here, a set here, and a set here. It's kind of hard to end up gearing it, but that way you would get access to 3 more skills in Meteor. So that would kind of make the tree a little bit better. You'd get access to a decent amount more damage through the extra meteors falling. But so that's the core of the build. It's increased damage through the Blatchers set, and I took a T8, but there's other ways to build it. You don't need to be stuck on this. I don't think the T8 mod is like super important. I think you could, if you don't have the best staff ever, you can still, this build does enough damage, you'll still be able to clear everything. So some other highlights is I did Unstable Core. If you can get a high mana regen Unstable Core, or just any decent rolled Unstable Core with, 1 LP where you can put the +4 meteor on there. I think you could even add like +24 intelligence here. I don't think that would be that much worse than +4 meteor. And it'd be more versatile. Either one is probably pretty good. But this will also give you +1 lightning skills, so you get the extra skills, damage, mana, and then the mana regen is really nice for Meteor. The other notable item is Mana Guide. So this one's a little interesting. This is not the best Mana Guide ever. You can see I have a bunch of my inventory. I have a couple 2 LPs that are like, I should probably put something on them. I just didn't get around to it. But we're going to get spell critical strike chance. I needed that for my build. If you're already spell critical strike chance capped, like if you're already at 100% crit, you can take a different mod. But I needed it to get crit capped. This one is really interesting though. I played around with a bunch of amulets. So one of the problems with Meteor is you need to focus a lot. You just cast for a minute and then you're like out of mana. And this is really going to allow you a lot of mobility. You can see in the gameplay footage. Especially because we get this haste through, do this, go here, we're slow, and then we get haste. And all of a sudden you're going around pretty fast, you can evade out of it. So you can actually move pretty fast while regenning a good amount of mana. So that's going to be kind of the key with mana war. That's sort of what the item does. So you can read the stats, you get some mana regen, you get some word decay thresholds, you get some flat mana, but mostly you're gonna, while channeling focus, you move towards your current target location at 80%. And I really did think this is the best way to go, because you're gonna need to focus so much to regain mana. And if you're standing still, you're a sitting duck. You're just gonna die. So I really think this is the way to go, and it's pretty fun. You get to kind of zoom around while you're regaining mana. It makes it a lot more kind of dynamic and less I would say it's like can be pretty stressful to play without Mana Guide. You just have to be like really committed and knowing when you're just going to be able to like stand still next to a boss, you know, for a long enough period of time to regenerate mana. So I'll touch on some of the other gear. This is just what I have. Like all of these are just kind of what I have for SSF. They're not like, you know, the best in slot or anything like that. So we just got crit chance, and then I needed to round out my resistances, and then intelligence. This is their intelligence and mana regen and resistances. So the rings are pretty basic. This is, you know, I got my T7 intelligence. The Eternal Gauntlets, because they grab so much plus armor, is generally going to be the best. I think I don't know about mandatory, but very, very good. So the way you're going to have defense in this is stacking armor. See, we have 1200 armor, and you know, we get 200 here, and then the Praetorian belt is 200. So we're getting a big chunk of our entire armor from just these two pieces. So I think they are pretty important. So yeah, I segue over to here. We get mana regen, cooldown recovery speed. That's a really important stat. Probably the top stat on belts, because you can only roll on belt and boots. So I try to get a decent roll on boots, but you're going to need your T7 movement speed on boots. That's kind of the most important. And then getting a T7 movement plus, you know, intelligence cooldown and hybrid health is usually pretty tough. So I try to just stick with, like, you know, the T7 movement and then just get the other mods and move on. But yeah, also you can get unique versions of different things. You know, there's a few boot options like your Blood of the Exile, which are really good too, and you'll just be way faster. I don't really like the Meteor belts. I don't think it's terrible. I just find myself not really liking it. I don't like the auto cast very much. It can really kind of like go haywire and drain all your mana. And it's okay. If you like it and you want to play around with it, go for it. I just prefer more like controlled, knowing exactly kind of when and how many meteors I'm casting and stuff like that. So that the other one's called Harbinger of the Stars. And yeah, you can feel free to look into it. I just don't particularly like it. And then this is just stat stick. So the Scrying Eye is the elemental crit strike multiplier. So that's going to be your best base. 25 is a lot. I think it goes up to 24. So we could try to get a high roll on that. And then other than that, we've got you know, intelligence, health, another crit, and then elemental resistance. Just so I'm clear, like cold damage is a dead mod here. Freeze rate multiplier and cold resistance is a dead mod here. Ward gain and potion use is like dead. So there's a few dead mods. I think those are the only dead mods for this build. So that's it. Feel free to leave comments, questions. I'd love to talk about the build. I'll keep theory crafting this. This is my favorite build, so I'll probably keep, you know, guides up to date and keep doing this build. I spent the longest time doing this build by far. It's super fun to play. It's not as strong as a few other builds, namely, I'm looking at you, Lightning Blast. Lightning Blast is sort of the king right now. Lightning Blast Rune Master. Lightning Blast Rune Master, I think this has potentially slightly higher burst damage, but the Lightning Blast has really good sustain damage, like almost infinite sustain. And then it's like way tankier for this build. Just not even close. It's like feel invincible on that build. But yeah, this is a pretty cool build. There's a lot of different options. Don't get too locked into like I need exactly these things. The core things you want to get are Mana Guide and then Valatria's set. And then other than that, you should be pretty good. Get spell crit multi, intelligence, armor, move speed. Should be good to go. Happy hunting, everybody. Have a great day.